Part 1 of R32 swapping my Mark IV Volkswagen GTI.
So the car is already jacked up.
And I got the 3.2 liter VR6 right here and all the parts that I need to complete this swap. And I will be posting a more detailed version of this entire swap on YouTube if you guys are interested in checking that out.
First things first, we got to remove the grille, the bumper, and the wheels because we will need to disconnect the axles. Once everything's off, you have to remove the entire radiator support, which is actually really easy to remove. There's just 4 bolts on this bumper, and there's 1 bolt here and 1 on the other side. Then you just have to disconnect a couple of hoses and it'll pop right off. Now, I know this is random, but let me show you guys one cool little thing about these GTIs. So not only do they look like minivans, but they can also be used like minivans. So I'm gonna be putting a bunch of parts back there. Don't forget to use your wheels as backup, even if you have really nice wheels.
Trust me, your life is more important than your 3-piece wheels.
Now that the bumper's off and the front is popped up a little bit, it's time to unhook the hood latch. Now you can go ahead and pop this whole thing off. Now I will say that's one annoying thing about this car. Anytime you need to maintenance something, you always have to take off the whole front end. There's ways to do it while keeping the front end on, but it's a lot harder to work on.
So a lot of people remove the engine without taking out the air intake manifold, but in order to do that, you have to disconnect the downpipe or chop off your exhaust, which I don't want to do either or. I just want to disconnect this straight from the exhaust manifolds.
So once that's off, 2 bolts later, and the heat shield comes right off. Now that the exhaust is exposed, it's time to disconnect it. Now I'm a little bit nervous because I see people get impatient here and they just chop them off instead, but I'm gonna try my best to get them off smooth. So it's actually going pretty smooth. As you can see, the whole stud came out with this one, but that's fine. Now there's 4 more nuts down there, but the left axle's kind of in the way. It's definitely possible to remove them without disconnecting the axle, but I'm gonna have to disconnect both axles anyway, so I might as well disconnect it already and make my life easier. And the axle is disconnected, and this is how I kept my axle from moving. And just like that, both axles are officially disconnected. Now let's get the last 4 bolts off of the exhaust manifolds. So 2 more studs ended up coming out with the nuts, but they are completely unscrewed. Now let's see how easy it is to pop them off. So I just had to use 2 hands and shake them super hard. Now we just got to get this cold air intake out the way. Then we can disconnect everything on this side, and then we'll be on our last step, which will be the motor mounts. So we got almost everything disconnected, and check this out, guys. Take a close look at this fuel row and how thick it is. Now look at the new one and how thick this one is. This is going to be a pretty big upgrade, and I know the flames are going to be a lot bigger. Now I'm starting to wonder if I could have upgraded my car with this fuel row. Alright guys, so we're almost there. We just got to disconnect the dog bone, which is the transmission mount, and then we can disconnect the 2 motor mounts, and the engine will come right out. So we got the dog bone off. Let's put it here next to the rest of the parts. And I got the jack with a piece of wood down there to drop the engine. Now I just have to take off 3 more of these bolts and the engine will come right out. As you can see, I got 1 bolt out, so I need to take off this one and these 2. Then the engine will officially drop. Alright, so as you guys can see, this side is completely unbolted and the engine didn't just completely